Because that's
See,
his
that's
world.
what you
He's
do
a
when
European.
you know you're going to be put in your place. Because
Tom
Stevie
Brady is more
Caldwell
important.
is going to have truth serum.
Who do you think causes a bigger stir in the States tomorrow? Is it Tom Brady walking in somewhere or Lionel Messi?
Lionel Messi.
Oh, you're such an idiot.
You're high.
You're
you are
such
high.
a buffoon. Like,
you are high.
Tom Brady.
It's such a ridiculous, and I know you're being a contrarian, which I have an appreciation for. But even this one, you're not even trying. You're not putting it on thick enough because
Dude,
it's such a ridiculous statement.
Okay? Let me just pitch something to you. Downtown Toronto, very European, very diverse culture downtown. Lionel Messi and Tom Brady walking down the streets. You tell me, mister, who's going to get more attention? And you know the answer, but you can't handle the answer.
No, I can't handle the answer because I think the NFL is infinitely more popular than MLS up here. But it's different because they're bigger figures than even the sports in a way.
Dude,
but again,
Messi
Toronto's not
Messi
in America,
is bigger
dude.
larger than life type guy.
I understand
I'm telling
that.
you.
I understand
Isn't Messi
that.
like 5'5"?
Yes, he's not a big dude.
So you wouldn't even notice him.
He's
He'd
not a
just
big dude.
Blend into the crowd, whereas Brady's like 6'4", 6'5".
So now Messi's just some circus carny.
No.
I did not say
That's
that.
not being suggested at all.
I just said, like, he's smaller in stature. He can probably hide in a crowd a lot better than LeBron walks in who's 6'8"?
Right. That's the thing.
Shaq,
like NBA players, they can't hide. Everywhere they go. If you're
Okay,
6'10",
you know what? You know who could answer the question with just like an honest opinion tomorrow? And we just need 2 minutes of his time. It's James Duthie. James Duthie would have an honest approach and say, this is the answer.
Sure. And again, I can't stress this enough. We're talking about in the United States of America, not down the streets of Toronto or Buenos Aires.
The name Messi is a global
global
name.
It doesn't matter if it's global. There are cricket players that are global. Do you think Americans care compared to
I couldn't name you
Tom
a
Brady
player.
or what? Yeah, but that's the point. Like if you go to certain parts of this world, the most popular rugby player, you go to Australia, guess what? That guy is more popular than Tom Brady.
In the city of Houston, if Messi's walking down the street, some guy, like a bunch of guys having beers aren't going to go, oh, look at that little Smurf guy walking. They're going to say, that's Messi.
Now, well, they might, but guess what? If Tom Brady walks down, they absolutely will. If LeBron walks down, they absolutely will. It's not even close in terms of the popularity of a superstar quarterback compared to a soccer player in the States. And it never will be.
You're being ignorant to yourself.
Okay. Let's put a Canadian perspective on this. Connor McDavid, Wayne Gretzky walks in, or Lionel Messi. Who do you think gets more buzz walking into Boston Pizza on front?
I'll tell you what, Lionel Messi gives him a damn run for his money.
You think Lionel Messi gives Wayne Gretzky a run?
Dude, we're talking about the greatest soccer player in the world.
And the greatest hockey player of all time.
Yeah. You know what? If you want to back it up, make it happen and get both people walking into a restaurant.
Okay, let
Boston
me pull some
Pizza
strings.
on front.
Yes, Boston Pizza on
Who
front.
Who causes a bigger stir walking down Front Street into Boston Pizza?
Let's clarify. They'd both cause a massive stir, clearly.
Who's our next guest? And Johnny?
It's Johnny. And
Johnny thinks
Bring him in here. Mike Johnson.
I know what I know what Johnny's going to say because Johnny thinks he's Europe. He's got a European flair.
Dude,
he's very cosmopolitan.
Anyone that doesn't agree with you, you're a fraud. That's what you are.
You're an idiot, though. You're actually an idiot.
Yeah, I know.
To suggest that Lionel Messi would create more of a buzz in like an American town than Tom Brady is easily the dumbest thing ever said on this show.
Let's bring in here Mike Johnson, our NHL
Here's
insider
Mike Johnson. No, our international correspondent. He's an international correspondent. He lives international waters. That's where Johnny lives. Go ahead and ask the question.
This is the question, Johnny. Walking down the street in an American city like Miami, do you think Lionel Messi would create as big a buzz as Tom Brady?
In Miami, it's not even close. Lionel Messi would be so much bigger than Tom Brady.
You're a joke. You're a joke.
Idiots.
You're not even close.
This guy's such a dummy.
Now you put him into, Iowa or, somewhere where, football is king.
Football's king everywhere, Johnny, in the U.S. Every single inch of America, it's football country. Every inch.
but the gap between football and the other football is bigger in some areas than others. You put him in Miami, I'm sorry. The Latin flavor, South America, the Cuba, like that sort of, no. This is like, well, Tom Brady, I guess, is the greatest football player of all time, I guess, for sure. Lionel Messi has got that, like, people break down and cry thing when he's around. Like, he is, like, you know, he's a deity walking around the streets. So I'm like, depending on the city, and I think in Toronto, it would be Messi by a mile over Tom Brady.
Oh, music to my ears.
Okay. We can't get funding for the national team. We got the coach yelling about these guys are taking buses to get the games, but now there's a soccer player that'll be massively more popular than some of the biggest North American superstars.
Well, hang on. Hey, to even suggest that he's not more popular than Tom Brady is obviously factually wrong, right?
Of course, around the world.
Right.
Of course, around the world. We're talking about the States. That was the question. In the United States.
Okay, here's the King Daddy topper. Here's the final decision. New York City, Times Square. Johnny? Who is
Messi.
it?
1,000%.
This guy's a joke. He shouldn't even host his own show.
Yeah, it's not even that close. Like
I know. I know.
It's you know. So I don't even know if Tom Brady would like. Tom Brady, like, he's amazing. Obviously, he's incredible.
He would be picking up Messi's scraps.
He'd be like, he'd get caught in the undertow. He'd be like one of the fanboys, like not allowed past the velvet rope.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
You guys are so off base.
I just love it when a plan comes together. I just love it when
lived in the States as long as you have. Like, do you realize that the NFL is obviously the king
in North America?
We don't care about your thoughts. We're just dealing with the truth.
But
all we want is facts.
Yeah, you guys just you can point to so many different places in the U.S. where Tom Brady, LeBron James, like, yes, we get the popularity of Messi and understanding how big of a celebrity he is around the world and how great of a player he is, arguably the greatest footballer of all time. Right. But in the States, soccer is so far behind the NFL, the NBA.
We're not talking about the popularity of a sport. We're talking about the legacy.
But it all factors in. It all factors in. Yes, it does. Americans are parochial. They care about the U.S. That's what they care about.
Americans would care about watching Tom Brady compete. Like, I don't think MLS is going to blow up because of Lionel Messi.
No, it won't.
Like, I don't think that's going to happen. All of a sudden, like, Apple TV is going to be like on it. You know, you got to have it to watch Messi play. Not in North America. Not in America. Now, in South America and Europe, sure, but not in North America. But that's not the same question. And I do think this guy is so popular, his global reach is so big that when he walks into whatever, some restaurant in L.A. versus LeBron, it's a toss-up. I might side with Messi. He's the most famous athlete in the world. So,
yes, he is outside of the borders of America, though.
And how much that carries over versus the other guys.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt this programming. I just got an email, and it said, most famous athletes in the world. Number 1, Ronaldo. Okay? Mm-hmm. Number 2, Bron.
Really? Interesting.
Number
so your boy
3,
Messi.
Take a wild guess who number 3
I would
is.
assume it's Lionel Messi.
That's right.
Yeah.
So moving on, Johnny.
What's the source of this? Instagram followers? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
No, it just says the most famous athletes in the world.
And it's a list made up on Reddit by a guy that's...
Again, internationally, but again, there are cricket players where if you go to certain places, that guy would create a completely insane buzz. There are rugby players. In the States, soccer is not even on the list in terms of what is going to get people buzzing and talking and gets the focus of Americans.
I just think you can pick and choose certain cities.
That article was from the businessinsider.com.
Oh, what an amazing source of information.
I like it.
Some guy's basement. Anyway.
You're right. I think you could choose any city in America and Messi would be recognizable, but it depends on.
No, I don't think that's true.
You don't think?
I don't believe that's true. I think you go to Middle America. I think there's a lot of people that would have no idea who Lionel Messi is.
Well,
no idea.
That might be true.
No idea. Like, again, I guess what I'm saying is I think you guys are giving more credit to Americans in terms of what happens outside their borders. I don't believe there are a lot of Americans that do not care about anything that doesn't happen in their country. And Messi has not been in their country before.
Yeah,
in terms of playing and in terms of being on the platform.
Americans care about the best, the things that are the best. And he's the best. And the World Cup, I don't know what the World Cup final drew on TV in America. I bet it was somebody, look it up. Was it 45 million people? It was.
They would have done
massive. Yeah,
they would have done great numbers.
Soccer
right?
is
huge.
Of course.
Not Super Bowl numbers, but massive, massive numbers. In certain cities, I think it is a geographical question.
Sure.
Certain cities, it'll be Tom Brady, but I think certain cities, it would be Messi.
Yeah, and a lot of that based on demographics, backgrounds, all that kind of stuff, for sure. And that's why it's completely arbitrary. But
in Toronto, Messi.
Really?
Messi, not even close.
Not even close. Not even close.
Well, close is a relative term. I think decidedly Messi people would be driving from all over the city at the prospect of seeing him. No one's leaving their house to see Tom Brady.
Nobody's leaving their house. Tom Brady's showing up at Boston Pizza, and there's nobody there for Tom Brady.
So we're talking right now, and you guys Tom Brady's having beers at Boston Pizza.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving my house in North Toronto to drive down there.
Okay, so
I would.
He's not leaving his house to go see Tom Brady.
How far west do you have to go?
All right.
How far west do you have to go outside of a city like Toronto where, maybe it's not? Do you go to
Winnipeg? Winnipeg. Do you think they're probably for Bull Levi Mitchell is probably causing more of a stir?
That's what I mean. It just depends.
Milt
Like you say,
got to go to Boston.
Right. You get Milt walking around. That's our guy.
Exactly.
All right. Anyway, I don't think we accomplished anything here. I'm going down with a ship on this one, man. I am sticking to my take that Messi is going to be a C-list American celebrity when this guy starts playing.
With the Stars in 2 years.
Yes, they're going to be offensive linemen playing.
I always thought that Beckham had the reach because of the looks and the wife and all of that. Beckham kind of, Messi's obviously just.
Messi's better.
Well, yes, but Beckham was the guy who's just, for me, that was world renowned and he was the total package.
Sure.
Every time he went, and which one did he married? Was it Spice?
Spice? Well, they're all Spice.
Posh Spice.
Yeah,
Posh
Spice.
Yeah, that was like a power couple for the world.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that Beckham had that. Wherever he went, he made a stir.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Messi would probably be in, cut above that, but just not as, like I say, I don't know.
In terms of pop culture and stuff, Beckham was a different beast.
Yeah.
Anyway, Johnny, moving on here. What are you making all these rumors and reports coming out of the Leafs? There seems to be, a lot, nothing's happened yet. Does that tell you anything? The fact that, we haven't heard of any signings, we haven't. No indications. Trades are on the horizon. What do you think's going on with Tree Living and company?
Well, I feel as though the whole league right now must be in some sort of calm before the storm mentality because there are players that are going to get dealt the next week. They have to. The guys in Winnipeg, they have to get dealt kind of this summer, which is likely before July 1st, which is likely by the draft. So stuff has to be percolating. The Leafs would be taking stock. Now, it's a lot for Brad Treliving to absorb quickly. He's obviously bright enough to do it, but just, he's got to get in, he's got to meet his staff, he's got to meet the player, he's got to get a plan, he's got to try to formulate all of this on the fly with a new organization. So I guess that's what's happening. That and the fact that there may not be as many sweeping changes in Toronto as some fans would like to see. Maybe they're not going to have, same coach, same primary players, same main defenseman. I will say this, though, as I have read the last couple of days about TJ Brodie being a buyout candidate, I'm putting it out there now. That makes zero sense to me.
I think that's insane. I'm sorry.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane noodles. So he makes $5 million. He was very good in the first round against Tampa. Yeah, he struggled a little bit against Florida. But he's been kind of their most steady defenseman at $5 million. You're not going to do better than him for that amount. It's just crazy. you could, if you wanted to get rid of him, you could trade him. You could certainly trade him by absorbing some of the money, which you wouldn't have to. But I'm saying, like, buyout makes zero sense to me. Now, they may end up doing it, and I'll be sitting there like, I don't get it. But, like, that one that's out there, that shouldn't, like, and if I'm running the show, like, that is not the move I'm looking to make. TJ Brodie with just 1 year left on his contract. That makes no sense.
Well, let me ask you this, Johnny. If you were to define Brodie's placing in all of this, do you believe he would be defined, or would you define him, TJ Brodie, as closer to a core piece or a depth piece?
He's closer to a core piece. He's just an expiring core piece. You know, I don't know how big your core is, but he's going to be one of your top 3 defensemen. So that feels like a core. It's not a core 4 in Riley, but he's one of your goalie 3 defensemen, 6 forwards, so one of your top 10. If that's your core of your good team, your good players, he's going to be one of those 3 guys. Like, I can't imagine the Leafs re-racking their defenseman to the extent that he's not a top 3 defenseman with them. And at an $85 million cap, like $5 million for a stay-at-home, steady Eddie, you don't get a lot of points out of him, but you don't need a lot of points out of him. He does exactly what he's supposed to do and does not make too much money to do it. And he was pretty good this year, albeit, you know, injuries have been creeping into his availability. But other than that one caught me off guard, and I didn't quite get it.
Johnny, if you're going to not get a lot of points, don't you? I always say, if you're not going to contribute offensively, like, you've got to be physical in your own zone. And that one goal, that Reinhart goal in Florida in the playoffs, it drove me nuts. Like, his carelessness behind the net was the reason that goal happened. Now, there was a few other things that happened leading up to that were nonsense, but it's just like, if you talk about changing the team's, like, identity and approach, his approach is pretty casual, man. You could say what you want. Talented player, and everybody talks about the stick checks, but it doesn't really seem like... And the one thing that the Vegas Golden Knights is, and this is a mentality, okay? And not everybody's into it because it's not that fun and it's kind of weird. Like, Vegas was comfortable hurting people. They're like, you know what? Alex Pietrangelo took a stick and tickled the scoreboard and tried to break what's-his-face's arm.
Draisaitl, yeah.
It's like, that's kind of not normal, but... And it's like Kolasar had no problem, like, trying to hurt Matthew Tkachuk, running him over. Every time somebody touched the puck, those defensemen, mean, physical, they wanted to hurt people. And if you don't want to go out there and be physical and attempt to hurt somebody in the right way, like hit to hurt, like hit to knock them off the puck and do damage, I don't know what you think you're doing. And not everybody can do it, but there's got to be a general approach. And if you have too many guys, and they have a lot of them, where their approach is, I'm not going to hit anybody, and I'm not going to get hit, and I want to get out of this unscathed, but I want to score a goal. That ain't going to get you nowhere, man.
So, it's a lot to unpack there, but I will say this. Like, you need some guys who want to be physical. And I get the sentiment, like, yeah, hitting to hurt. Like, absolutely. If I could separate a guy's shoulder legally, knock him out of a series,
I think I went too far with those comments, Johnny, but you know what I mean. It's like just an approach where it's big boy stuff, and it's like physical.
Yeah, I get it, but not every guy's wired that way. You need some of that. Like, is Alex Pietrangelo physical? I mean, he flashed a guy, but he doesn't really hit too many guys. I'd say this. Who's the best defensive defenseman in the league? The Jacob Slavin?
Slavin.
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
How many people does he hit?
Maybe it's competitiveness.
Yeah, and now competitiveness can manifest itself in different ways. And you may not like the way that TJ Brodie does, and you're right. He had a couple really tough looks against Florida. Not wrong there, not wrong at all. But I would say he's a good defensive defenseman. He's a guy that he helps his partner be something closer to the best versions of themselves than he is.
Maybe he needs to play with a big, tough dude. Well, like a Josh Manson or something like that.
Don't you guys agree? Like, I think he's I wouldn't say the least of the problems back there, but he would be of the lesser problems. Like, I would address a lot more. Like, I'd move away from Justin Holl. I'd start to take a look at, like, if anything, Brodie played himself, for me, into a second pairing from a first pairing. That's like that, but he's still a really effective player. And if you tried to replace that, it's going to cost you $5 million or more.
He was a first D pairing 6 years ago with Mark Giordano. That's the only time he's ever been a first pairing.
But they played him a lot with Morgan Riley. And
that doesn't mean he's a first pairing guy. I never viewed him as that.
On this group. What I'm saying, this group. So if you're going to change that, Like, you're changing. You've got to find somebody to play with Morgan Riley on that top pairing, and Brodie can play on that second pairing.
They've needed that for 5 years, Jamie.
I agree. But I just think Brodie can skate. He can move the puck. Like, I don't think he's a guy that I would circle and go, he's the problem. There's 3 other culprits on the back end that I would have a problem with before him, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's a first pairing complementary player. Like, he can play with other great players. When Mark Giordano won the North, he made him really good. When Morgan Riley needs some insulation, let's be honest, the Leafs don't have a number one defenseman. Like, if we're going to keep it real, like, that's what they don't have. Like, Morgan Riley is a great offensive defenseman. He has been in his career. He's not a true number one defenseman. He's not good without it. He's just okay when he doesn't have it. He's awesome with it, but he's not good without it. So before we worry about, a 3 or a 4, like, the problem is the 1. And that's, Morgan Riley has been an amazing Maple Leaf. And on the ice, off the ice, all of it. But he's not a bona fide top 15, 20 defenseman in the league anymore, if he ever was. And so that's where he needs his partner, TJ Brodie, oftentimes, to help him. And I think that's what Brodie's been good at. He helps the guys he's with be better. And he's not super physical. He does most of his skate, his stick, and his positioning and everything else, which might rub some people the wrong way. But I'm with Doodles. Like, I don't think, he's further down the list of things I need to correct before we get to him. There's other stuff to do.
Yeah, and like, I'm with you in terms of the buyout suggestion, and I think it was maybe Terry Cochon of the Sun that reported, his sources indicating that's not going to happen. They're not going to buy. He's got a year left. Plus, you could flip Brodie.
Yeah,
you could flip him.
Yeah, you could trade him.
Yes.
Like, it's not Oliver Ekman-Larsson, or something like that, where it's an untradeable situation.
I guarantee you the Edmonton Oilers would take him in a heartbeat as an upgrade.
Sure.
In some of their situations. Sure. Like, there's teams right there, teams throughout the league that would go, we'll take him.
I wouldn't be shocked if they flipped them.
Well, you could do that.
I wouldn't be shocked if they looked at.
But you better have some upgrades in the chamber here. Well, you're not just trying to move $5 million out to go, hey, let's find more space for Timothy Liljegren.
What do we do?
No.
That's
the issue that they have is you start looking past it. Connor Timmins, what's he ever going to give you? I don't know. Timothy Liljegren, you couldn't even trust him to play him in the playoffs, which I think was the wrong play. Keefe finally realized Hall had to come out, but then Hall went back in at some point, and Giordano's 40. Gio, by the end of the run, Gio couldn't keep up. I think he'll give you some good numbers and good stats during the regular season, but there's probably going to be an understanding that Mark Giordano probably won't be playing come playoff time.
Or play 55 games.
Yeah, exactly.
None of this everyday stuff. Yeah.
No, so that's all of a sudden that becomes, you got a number of guys.
Yeah.
You got to find 2 or 3 defensemen. And you got Matt Murray's contract. You got Jake Muzzin's contract, which will be long-term IR, but Matt Murray might not. If Murray shows up and passes a physical, he's going to want to play or be a part of the program.
Do you think that's a buyout or no? Like
Murray?
Yeah.
Here's my Murray trade, guys. San Jose has no goalie other than Kakinen.
Yeah.
They got a ton of cap space, even more if they happen to trade Erik Karlsson.
Mm-hmm.
They can absorb Murray, but not at the cost of a first-rounder, but maybe some sort of prospect or a middling pick. If they need to shed that salary but without buying him out, San Jose for Murray, and because they need a goalie kind of like him, and they could take him on, and it would kind of work for both sides. And the funny thing is, Hayes, you're not wrong. You go through the depth, and you're trying to find.
What's San Jose's number? Give me the number. I'll call.
1-800-SHARKS.
Yeah.
But the thing about Toronto, and maybe I'm off base. You guys tell me where you like. As much as you can talk about the goaltending, which will sort itself out, it was top 8 in the league. Much you're talking about the defensemen. I know playoffs didn't work, but regular season, they were a top 10 team in the league defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, what happened in the playoffs? They could not score goals. They scored 2 or fewer, 9 games in a row. That's why they lost. Not because, Samsonov or Wall wasn't good enough. Not because Brodie got walked at the end, although that wasn't a good look. It's because they could not score goals. And I think Toronto really needs to think about expanding their roster offensively. That's where I think more of the attention has to be paid. And not just have the core 4 and then wait until they get back on the ice. Other guys have to be able to score. You can't just have the top 2 lines and nobody else. So, it's tricky to do everything all at once because that's, like salary cap and everything else. But I think they need a lot of help up front. And maybe Matthew Nyes is one of the guys that helps. Maybe Nick Robertson comes back and he's one of the guys that helps. But they need more 40-point guys. They need more, quality offensive players that can help support, or not support, but augment what the top guys do. Before, that should be their. If I'm running the team, that's where I'm looking more so than how do I change TJ Brodie out.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Right?
I guess so.
We'll find out. We'll be down at Boston Pizza hanging out, waiting to see what happens.
Looking for Lionel or Tom?
Lionel. I kept calling him Lionel. Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie Messi.
Did we see Lionel Richie's house on the course this weekend?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
monster.
massive.
It was
14
a
bedrooms.
monstrosity.
Yeah.
It looked like a community center. It was crazy.
He was sick.
I saw Hefner's house under construction, but Lionel Richie, it was a palatial, O-Dog-like suite.
Yes.
Yeah, Lionel Richie, man, he was banging out hits long before Lionel Messi ever showed up.
He was doing it all night long.
Absolutely.
All night long. Love it.
Great dude. All right, Johnny, thank you, buddy.
All right, fellas, Boston Pizza on me.
You got it. There he is, Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. All night long. That is a great track.
He had some great, I mean, Dancing on the Ceiling. He had some big
That guy did
tunes.
some work.
Oof.
Work.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Big time. He would cause a stir.
Time.
He probably hit Miami up and caused a scene
Big time.
in
Well,
Miami.
dude, think he could open up his gate in his backyard and take a golf cart to Hugh Hefner's house.
That's true.
Yeah. What's up with the Playboy Mansion now? Are they going to keep it around?
Somebody
or?
bought it now, and they're just gutting it.
They're gutting
Renovating
it? Yeah. That's a shame.
Yeah.
What
How
are
much
you
you can do there?
What are you going to do? All right, Kevin Pelton coming up of ESPN. His take on all the rumors around the NBA. What does he make of Gary Trent Jr. opting in for next year? What might that tell us about Masai and Company's plan for the Raptors? OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Looks like Victor Wembanyama is going to throw the first pitch out in New York. There's pictures going around of him holding a baseball. It looks like Andre the Giant holding a like a Bud Light. Honestly, like this guy's.
Do you think he lands? Like you think it's just automatic superstar?
It
like,
feels like it.
You know what I
feels
mean?
like
The one
it.
that just doesn't disappoint, and he's dialed in right from the word go.
I hope so. I mean, Zion had a lot of fanfare. Now this guy's into.
Yeah, I would suggest Victor takes his notes from Zion and does the complete opposite of what Zion's been up to. Here's Kevin Pelton of ESPN, NBA and WNBA writer. Are you a believer that Victor Wembanyama, Kevin, is a 100% locked superstar for the next decade?
I mean, I think the biggest question, you were just alluding to Zion, like health is going to be, the biggest question mark with anybody. But providing that, I mean, from a skill standpoint, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to not succeed when you look at the combination of size and skill he possesses. I mean, defensively, I do think he's going to come in and be an immediate contributor from day one, really transform a San Antonio defense that was quite dismal at that end of the court last season. Offensively, I think it's going to take a little more time for him to grow into the kind of star that he can become. But you see him do things playing in France, and then particularly in the couple of games he played against G League Ignite in the Las Vegas area as exhibitions before the season that, nobody even close to his size is capable of doing. Like Kevin Durant is probably the closest at like 6'11", and he's doing this at 7'3", 7'4". So, from that standpoint, I like his odds.
Kevin, what's with the NBA? Brian, our host, brought this to our attention a couple of days ago. It seems like, and I don't know if this is like reckless tweets or reckless reporting or somebody wants this information out, but it's like teams are saying, oh, Portland is targeting this guy, that guy, and another guy. It's like, is that just part of the offseason buzz with the NBA? Where did it might be reckless scoops from God knows what Twitter accounts. Is there a method to that madness for teams that want to get certain scoops out or what?
Yeah, I think sometimes that can be part of the element of, if you're trying to create a market for a player and, a team that holds the number 3 pick and that we all think has a chance of potentially trading it to get someone who can contribute more on Damian Lillard's timeline. If they're interested, that drives up the value. I mean, some of it is, a lot of it I think comes down to kind of the language. Like, we see this across all things, and obviously it matters in other areas a lot more than sports, but it's never, well, we made a call about, or they asked about. It's targeted. My coworker was during the draft with his creative euphemisms for which teams were drafting. They, have a laser on them. So I think that's an element of it, because look, teams, they have to have trade conversations about just about everybody on their roster all the time, so you understand what the market looks like. That's kind of a natural part of the process, and very few of those conversations actually turn into trades, but when they get reported, they all sound imminent.
With Kevin Pelton of ESPN, we mentioned Zion Williamson, who's really been trending a lot recently. And not just because of health, partially because of DMs, which might be another thing that Victor needs to consider in the future. But it's been a mess for him based on injuries alone. It's been a mess. And I'm sure New Orleans looks at it. I'm sure their ownership looks at it and saying, we're paying this guy a fortune, which they didn't have to do, but everyone knew it was going to happen. They're going to give him the max deal, keep him around, first overall pick, blah, blah, blah. But now his name is out there a lot that maybe he could be on the move. If that's the case, how can you place a value on what Zion Williamson represents now, considering the injury issues he's had, and how do you possibly look past that if you're a team that's going to acquire him?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the reason you do it is because of the fact that that whoever else the value is affected by that. And therefore, even if we're talking about him hypothetically for the 3rd pick, well, if you would have said when Zion was in the draft, like, hey, what's it going to take to get from New York? I think had the 3rd pick and took Canadian RJ Barrett at that point. What's it going to take to get from the 3rd pick to the 1st pick? That would have been like, all your future draft picks, because of the fact that that's how high his value was at this point. So you're getting him at a discount, and the talent is still very much there when he was on the court last. I mean, I think, the other thing that you'd have to consider as an organization thinking about this is, to what degree do the Pelicans bear responsibility for some of what's happened in evidently a breakdown in the relationship between him and the organization? If you feel like we can connect with him better, then, maybe that helps, solve some of the issues that may be why New Orleans is trying to shop it.
Kevin, we were talking about giving people truth serum in a ridiculous potential segment about an hour and a half ago. And if you gave Masai Ujiri some, like, what do you honestly think he thinks of his group? Like, kind of the core and what they're capable of? Because it just doesn't seem possible to think that group can do anything more than what they've accomplished the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, trading a 2024 first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl did seem to indicate a certain degree of confidence that at the very least we can make the playoffs next year and, be more similar to where we were 2 years ago, where I think everyone was a lot more optimistic in terms of, the Raptors played so well in the second half. It felt like they could give Philadelphia a run in that first round. I mean, not championship contenders at that point, but maybe you could hope that as Scotty Barnes develops that kind of upside was there. Now I think the challenge is it's even not so much about the group. It's just this kind of ticking clock of the potential free agency for OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam that is going to force you to kind of be realistic about where you're headed in a hurry, because otherwise, you might find yourself needing to make a tougher decision about those players at the trade deadline.
Well, Gary Trent Jr. opted into his contract for next season, and he's not coming off a great year. But what might that indicate to you, Kevin, in terms of now what is in front of Masai and Bobby Webster and what they could end up doing here? Because there are a lot of rumors that they might run it back. They may keep Siakam, keep OG. Obviously, they're bringing Scotty back. If Gary comes back, maybe they find a way to make it work with Fred VanVleet. What does the Trent news today possibly say to you about what could happen here in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the VanVleet piece of it is by far the most important, because if it's not him at point guard, I don't think you're ready to kind of turn it over to some combination of, Barnes and Siakam, that's just probably not quite enough playmaking juice at that position. So, I think then you start thinking about, is Trent someone who you can use in a trade for a point guard or something along those lines? I think that's the possibility. If you do bring him back, I mean, they can negotiate an extension with him, and one of the elements of this new collective bargaining agreement that's coming into play on July 1st is that it's going to be much easier to extend a player, for up to 3 years and then still trade them, not have those restrictions on trading them that would have existed in the past if they got any kind of a raise.
Yeah, that we've been talking about that, like the new CBA kicking in, and how that could possibly, factor into decisions being made league-wide. Now, I'm curious how that works with what Phoenix did earlier this week or over the weekend. Now you brought Bradley Beal in, you got KD at a big deal, Booker's getting paid. Is that Phoenix and their new owner basically saying we're going to run at this for a year or two, and then if it explodes, it explodes?
I think the year or two factor is probably important in terms of, some of the restrictions now on teams that go over this second apron in terms of your draft pick potentially being moved to the end of the round if you stay over that for multiple years, 3 years in a row. So that's what's going to start to put a timetable on it. Now, the other element that my colleague Brian Windhorst has talked about is, so the conclusion Phoenix came to is, well, it doesn't make sense for us to kind of just barely spend over that second apron. If we're going to do it, we may as well go way over it. And, I think that was part of their logic in terms of not wanting to just cut Chris Paul and limit their options in terms of, having some exceptions to play with, but not being able to get a player nearly as good as Bradley Beal with those exceptions. And, the other element of it is they don't limit what you can do in terms of re-signing your own players. So now Phoenix, I expect, to be very, and this is what Windhorst reported, to be very aggressive trying to re-sign the guys that they have bird rights on. And, even if that's not necessarily the player you think is, going to be the guy in that spot for years to come, at least it gives us a salary that we can use to trade down the road by this year's deadline.
Do you have any hesitation thinking KD with his age and his health, like if he could still be part of a big three? Do you have any hesitation in thinking that?
Part of a big three, no. I mean, I think this is something I said on Twitter at the end of this year's Denver series is that you go back to 2021, the thought was after that series against Milwaukee where he nearly single-handedly dragged Brooklyn to the finish line against the eventual champions that, this is the best player in the league and, sort of he's indefensible come playoff time. And I think we've learned that you can defend him now. Boston did it in the first round against Brooklyn in 22. Denver did it last year. But part of it, big three, especially if Devin Booker plays like he did in this year's playoffs when he was the best of those guys, then I think definitely he can be part of it.
Well, it's going to be an interesting week. More than that, a couple of weeks, Kevin. You'll be all over it on ESPN, ESPN.com. We really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Be sure to check out those trade grades and free agency reactions.
You got it. Kevin Pelton of ESPN and ESPN.com.
Trade grades.
Yes. You got...
What's coming up, though?
The draft grades are always compelling. Like, listen, I love drafts, and I consume all that stuff afterwards. Who won, who lost, who had a good... You're not going to really know.
No, until you go back. Like, it's interesting to go back on drafts and go, man, they missed here or they hit it here. Like, it's... What organizations had that disaster drafting?
Boston had that one year where they had 3 first-round picks and they let... Barzell go.
Oh, yeah. Like
Charlie McAvoy. I don't know.
Tyler Connor.
Yeah, there was 3 in a row there for the Bruins.
Oh.
Yeah, there was, it was Greselek or something was the only one that, hit on there.
Well, it was DeBrusque.
That's
was the one guy of the 3 that actually made it. But afterwards, you had Shabbat going. You had Connor going.
It was
Barzell.
insane.
Those were the next 3 picks. Be pretty good. Although Boston, I mean, they're probably okay with the way everything is worked out. But... yeah, there have been... Who's
the basketball organization that missed on 2?
Well, Philly really screwed it up. Like, Minnesota was bad because they took Flynn and Rubio, and Steph Curry was on the board. That's the one. They had 2 picks in the same draft. They took 2 guards before Steph Curry. I'm pretty sure that's who you're talking about. They had I want to say back-to-back picks. He was the 5th pick and the 6th pick, and they took Flynn, Ricky Rubio, and
that's
I
hard.
think Steph Curry was on a board.
76ers took that dude first overall.
Yeah, Markelle Fultz.
He couldn't even shoot.
Yeah.
Couldn't shoot.
Literally got the yips within a few months. And that said, Lonzo went second to the Lakers, and Tatum went third to the Celtics. Oh. So Tatum clearly was the guy to take there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't only Philly that screwed that up.
But then you go back on drafts, and you're like, man, how did the team miss on that? How did... but in
the moment, it's just a lock.
Like that guy.
Yeah.
The only lock, for hockey this year is, Fantilli. There's going to be a few that are going to be really good players. Bedard,
but Bedard's the obvious. Wembanyama is an obvious.
Yeah.
But beyond that, who knows? Is Scoot Henderson going to be that great? He might not.
Yeah.
Once you get beyond that one, if it is a generational player, and if it's not a generational player, then you really have no idea.
Exactly.
Like the odds of the first overall pick being the best player are actually very low. Very low when you're considering, first overall versus the whole field.
Alexander Degg, Chris Pronger.
There's a pretty good example of a big swing and a miss. Oof. Big swing and a miss.
Wow.
But Noodles at that time, it was insane. It was overwhelming. Daigle's the best player. You know what I mean?
He was flashy, big personality.
I know. And it was I never heard one word of Ottawa might take Pronger. It was Daigle from the beginning of the season in the QMJHL.
Yeah. And that's who they took, and then we know the rest is history.
Well, he had a longer career than people think. Degg played for a while.
Hung around in Tampa a little bit.
Yeah. But it just you remember him in Ottawa, and that was it, gone.
Exactly.
But he was he had I think he played 700 or 800 games.
That's not bad, actually. I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I honestly would have assumed if you had asked me, I would have said he played 187 games. Overdrive.
I don't think it was any more than 400. Sorry.
Okay, we'll look it up. We'll come back with the answer. Overdrive brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Well, there it is. Joe from the Bridge has got it. 616 games.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Told you.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, you had Paul Correa going 4th.
Oh.
All right. Come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, best bets brought to you by FanDuel. I'm on the over in the Jays game tonight. And Verlander returning to Houston. I like Houston on the run line. 1.5 tonight. The Mets tonight. The Mets won big last night. But I like Verlander on the mound. I think he pitches well in big moments like this, and I think it's a close game tonight. I wouldn't be shocked if the Mets won outright again tonight. But Verlander back in the house.
Yep.
Go time. I'm on the Mets plus 1.5 tonight. Best bets brought to you by FanDuel. All right, boys. Good stuff today. The poll's a little bit difficult. Didn't necessarily go our way, but that's why
Beer League won. We didn't we both wouldn't make the team.
Yeah, that really stings.
Neither was
30. About a third of people voting on Twitter believe neither of us would make a Beer League secret pickup team. That is ridiculous. But it's a democracy, right? Go out and say what you got to say. It's all good. You can't be right all the time.
One vote.
Yep, that's all you can do. Speak the truth.
I think you're going to...
Give your opinion and let it go from there.
Somebody's going to reach out to both of you and invite you to their secret game.
Just a matter of time. We're out of here. Good stuff, everyone behind the scenes. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today, radio, TV, podcast, web. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.